Drive, Mike. Go. Just go. I slammed the dashboard so hard I felt the plastic crack. The Honda's AC was dead. The interior was 100 degrees, but the cold sweat soaking my shirt wasn't from the heat. I'm flooring it, dude, Mike screamed. Knuckles white on the wheel, I whipped my head around. Through the rear window, I saw the nightmare. 2 women, sprinting across the parking lot in 90-degree heat. My mother and Linda, my mother-in-law. They weren't running like parents, they were running like animals. Their faces were red, twisted, and wet with sweat. And Linda, she was fast. She reached the car handle a split second before the lock clicked. Click. Thwack, thwack, thwack. She bashed her massive diamond ring against the glass, inches from my face. Her eyes were manic, wide open, terrifying. I read her lips through the window. She wasn't screaming, "I love you." She was screaming, "You ungrateful brat." In her other hand, she was dragging a $5,000 lace wedding gown through the dirt. Go! The car finally gripped the road. We peeled out, spraying a cloud of gray dust all over that expensive white dress. As the venue disappeared, the silence in the car was deafening. I looked at my wife, Sarah, curled in the back seat. No wedding dress, just jeans, a t-shirt, and shaking hands. We did everything right. We said, "No. People say your wedding is the happiest day of your life." But as I watched my mother screaming in the rearview mirror, I realized the truth. We didn't just leave a wedding. We escaped a kidnapping. To understand why we ran, you have to understand the trap they built. It started 6 months ago at a steakhouse called the Gilded Lily, the kind of place where the silence is heavy enough to crush you. Sarah and I walked in buzzing with our secret. We were engaged. We sat in a high-backed leather booth before the waiter could even pour the water. I cleared my throat. We have some news. Thud. My mother-in-law, Linda, slid a 3-inch white binder onto the table. It hit the tablecloth with a heavy, final sound. June 12th, Linda said, smiling like a shark. St. Peter's Cathedral. We put the deposit down this morning. 300 guests. I blinked, stunned. Linda, we just got engaged. We haven't even decided. Oh, don't be silly, Mark, my own mother interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. You're an only child. You don't know how these things work. We do. We actually wanted something small, Sarah whispered. She was squeezing my hand under the table so hard her nails dug into my skin. Just close friends, maybe a courthouse. Linda let out a sharp, brittle laugh. A courthouse like criminals? Absolutely not. You are a reflection of this family, Sarah. You will not embarrass us with a budget wedding. Then the waiter arrived. This is the moment I knew we were doomed. I'll have the filet, Linda said. She pointed a manicured finger at Sarah, and she will have the wild mushroom risotto. Sarah went pale. Linda knew. She knew that Sarah has a severe intolerance to mushrooms. They make her violently ill. Mom, I can't eat that, Sarah said, her voice trembling. Just pick them off, Sarah, Linda snapped, handing the menu to the waiter without looking at her daughter. Stop being so dramatic. It's a 5-star restaurant. I opened my mouth to argue. But my father, who hadn't looked up from his scotch, finally spoke. I'm writing a check for $50,000, he said. He didn't look at me, he looked at the checkbook. This isn't your party, it's ours. You just need to show up and smile. That night, in the rain-slicked parking lot, we made a pact. I can't be their doll, Mark, Sarah cried. Then don't be, I said. Let's burn the script. The next week, we eloped. Just us. A courthouse clerk and peace. We thought we had won. We were so stupid. Fast forward to last month. After the elopement, the screaming voicemail stopped. The threats of disownment vanished. Suddenly, my mother and Linda were sweet. It was eerie. Like the sudden calm in the eye of a hurricane. Water under the bridge, Linda chirped over the phone. Then came the peace offering. An invitation to her friend's daughter's wedding. A countryside estate. I'll drive, Linda insisted. You'll get lost. Let me treat you. My gut screamed red flag. But Sarah wanted her mother back. She wanted to believe the war was over. So, I agreed. Saturday morning. Linda rolled up in her black luxury SUV. My mother was in the passenger seat. The car smelled like suffocating floral perfume. And leather. The AC was blasting. Freezing cold. Where is this place exactly? I asked, 20 minutes in. Just up north, Linda said vaguely. For 45 minutes, the mothers didn't speak to us. They just texted each other. Ping, ping, ping. They would read a message, look at each other, and giggle. It was a schoolgirl giggle that made the hair on my arms stand up. Did the package arrive? My mother whispered. Yes, Linda whispered back. The birds are in the cage. The birds? Linda, what is the address, right? I asked, louder this time. I need to put it in the GPS. She just turned up the volume on the radio. Soft jazz filled the car, burying my voice. I looked at Sarah. She looked green. I need air, she said. I reached for the window switch. I pulled it up. Nothing. I pulled it again, harder. Click, click, locked. I looked at the door panel. The little orange switch was flipped down. Child locks. Linda, unlock the windows, I said. My voice wasn't polite anymore. We're here, Mark, relax, she snapped. The SUV crunched onto a gravel driveway. Through the windshield, I saw a massive white tent, flowers everywhere, but the parking lot was empty. No guests, just us. We're early? Sarah whispered. 2 staff members were hoisting a massive vinyl banner above the entrance. I squinted through the tinted glass. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My ears started ringing. A high-pitched whine like a broken TV. The banner didn't say Emily and John. It read in 3-foot gold letters, Mark and Sarah, God bless this union. Hold up. If your jaw just dropped looking at that banner, imagine being in Mark's shoes right now. You are locked in a car with the 2 people who betrayed you. The realization is hitting you like a freight train. Before we dive into the insane escape, and trust me, it gets violent, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss the justice that's coming. All right, let's see how they get out of this trap. The moment the doors unlocked, the heat hit us. But it wasn't the humidity that made me gag. It was the smell. Lilies. Thousands of them. The air was thick with that heavy, cloying scent of white lilies. It didn't smell like a wedding. It smelled like a funeral parlor. Surprise! The shout came from everywhere. We stepped onto the gravel, blinking in the harsh sun, and they swarmed us. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in 3 years. They popped out from behind pillars, phones raised, recording us. It wasn't a party. It was an ambush. What is this? I stammered. My voice sounded small, weak. Mom, what is going on? My mother stepped forward. She looked serene, terrifyingly calm. She smiled at me the way you smile at a toddler who just dropped an ice cream cone. We're fixing your mistake, Mark, she said softly. We knew you didn't really mean to run off to that courthouse. It was just a rebellious phase. So, we brought Father O'Malley. He's waiting in the gazebo to make it valid. It is valid, I said, my chest tightening. We are already married. Shh. she hissed, her eyes darting to the relatives nearby. Stop making a scene. You're being dramatic. Look at all this. We spent thousands of dollars because we love you. Don't be ungrateful. That's how gaslighting works. It makes the ground feel unstable. For a split second, I felt guilty. Did they do this out of love? Am I the toxic one? Then Linda made her move. She bypassed me completely and lunged for Sarah. Come on, Sarah, Linda chirped, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. She clamped her hand around Sarah's bicep. Her grip was tight, too tight. We have the dress in the bridal suite. It's a princess ball gown. Much better than whatever this is. She gestured with disgust at Sarah's jeans. Sarah froze. It was the trauma response, the fawn response. She just stood there, eyes wide, trembling, letting her mother pull her toward the building. I don't want to, Sarah whispered. Nonsense. Linda pulled harder. You're just nervous. You'll thank me later. Mother knows best. I watched Linda dragging my wife away. And suddenly, the fog in my brain snapped. A memory flashed in my mind. Not a memory of us. A memory of a Reddit thread I read months ago. The words seared into my brain. They held her down. They stripped her naked. They forced her into the costume like a doll. I looked at Sarah's terrified face. If she goes into that room, she isn't coming out the same person. The guilt vanished. The confusion died. Rage took its place, cold, sharp. Clarity. I stepped forward. I shoved my arm between Linda and Sarah. Don't touch her. I didn't yell. I growled it. Linda recoiled, clutching her chest like I'd slapped her. Mark, you nearly knocked me over. You are hurting your mother-in-law. We are leaving, I announced. I grabbed Sarah's hand. Her fingers were ice. Now. We turned to run back toward the car, but the path was blocked. My father was standing there. He's 6'2". Granite face. He wasn't smiling. He blocked the exit, arms crossed over his chest. You aren't going anywhere, he rumbled. Guests are arriving in 10 minutes. 200 people are coming to see you. You will not humiliate this family. Move, Dad, I said. Get inside and put on the suit, Mark, he commanded, or so help me God. I will cause a scene that will ruin your career. He took a step toward us. He raised his hand. I looked left. The banquet hall. I looked right. A service door, slightly ajar. Run, I whispered to Sarah. We bolted right. We ducked through the service door, sprinting down a narrow hallway that smelled of bleach and catering trays. Footsteps pounded behind us. Get back here. I saw a door marked janitorial. I shoved Sarah inside and dove in after her. I slammed the door and threw the deadbolt. Click. Darkness swallowed us. Outside, fists started pounding against the wood. We were trapped. But at least, we were together. The darkness inside the closet smelled like industrial bleach and terrified sweat. I dragged a heavy metal folding chair from the corner and jammed the backrest under the doorknob. It wasn't a perfect barricade, but it was the only thing standing between us and the mob. Sarah was slid down against the wall, sitting on a bucket of floor wax. She was hyperventilating short, shallow gasps. Like a drowning animal. Outside, the muffled bass of the DJ's sound system thumped through the walls. Celebrate good times. Come on. The irony made me want to vomit. My hands shook violently as I pulled out my phone. 1 bar of signal. I dialed Mike. He picked up instantly. Yo. Why are you calling? Aren't you at dinner? Mike, I whispered, I need you to come get us now. Whoa, your voice? Where are you? Route 9, the estate. It's It's a wedding, Mike, my wedding. Silence on the line. Then, what? You got married months ago. They tricked us, I said, watching the doorknob twitch. They drove us to a venue. There are 200 guests. They tried to force Sarah into a dress. We're barricaded in a closet. Mike didn't laugh. He didn't ask questions. His voice dropped. Deadly serious. Mark, listen to me. The realization hit him and me at the exact same second. They didn't trick you into a party. They drove you to a secondary location. They trapped you. They are forcing you to perform for them. He paused. That isn't a wedding, Mark. That is a kidnapping. Kidnapping. The word hung in the cold air. It stripped away the guilt. It stripped away the, but she's my mom, excuses. They weren't family anymore. They were captors. I'm coming, Mike said. Send the pin. Do not open that door. Bam, bam, bam. Fists hammered against the wood. The door frame shook. Mark! It was my mother. Open this door. Aunt Linda is asking for you. The photographer is charging by the hour. I signaled Sarah to stay dead quiet. Mark! Her voice pitched up, high, frantic. Stop being so selfish. You are ruining everything. We paid for the DJ. We paid for the salmon. She wasn't worried about her son. She was worried about the salmon. Then a new voice. A male staff member. Ma'am, is there a problem? Oh, thank God, my mother said. She switched instantly. From screaming banshee to concerned mother, her voice became sickeningly sweet. Yes, my son. He's having a panic attack in there. He's unwell. I need to give him his medication. Do you have a key? I do, ma'am. The guy stammered. But if he's sick, just open the door. She snapped, the mask slipping. Hurry! I heard the jingle of keys. Sarah looked up at me, terror. Pure, unadulterated terror. Mark, get behind me, I whispered. I leaned my full weight against the door. I braced my boots against the linoleum. I became a statue. Click. The lock tumbled. The handle turned. The door cracked open an inch. I saw the light, but the chair and my shoulder held the line. Through the crack, I saw my mother's face. She looked deranged. Her eyes were wide, manic, her makeup melting in the heat. Mark, she hissed through the gap, clawing at the wood. Let me in. You are humiliating me. Just come out and smile. Why are you doing this? She wanted a reason. She wanted to argue. She wanted to negotiate. But I remembered the Reddit thread. When you justify, you tell them their opinion matters. I put my face to the crack in the door. I looked her right in the manic, wet eye. No, she spluttered, pushing harder against the door. What do you mean, no? That's not an answer. Give me a reason. I'm your mother. I slammed my shoulder into the wood, forcing the door shut in her face. No is a complete sentence, I roared. Get away from the door. If you try to open this again, I'm calling the cops. Silence. She hadn't expected teeth. She expected the quiet, obedient boy she raised. She didn't know what to do with the man in the closet. Buzz. My phone lit up. Mike, I'm out front. Engine running. Honda Civic. Run. I kicked the chair away. Ready? I asked Sarah. She wiped her face. She stood up. She looked angry. Ready. I grabbed the handle. On 3, 1, 2, 3. We burst out of the closet and into the ballroom. The room had filled up while we were hiding. 200 people holding champagne flutes turned to look at us. Friends. Distant cousins. Business partners of my father. The DJ saw us sprinting and panicked. He cut the music. Screech. The silence was heavy enough to crush a lung. We had to cross the entire length of the dance floor to get to the exit. It was a gauntlet. I saw Aunt Linda holding a glass of wine. Her mouth open in a perfect O. She stepped forward to block us. "Where are you going?" she hissed. "The cake cutting is in 5 minutes." I didn't stop. I dropped my shoulder and dodged her like a linebacker. She stumbled back, sloshing cheap Pinot Grigio all over her beige dress. We hit the double doors and burst out into the blinding sunlight. The fresh air hit my lungs like a drug. "You ungrateful little—" My father. He and Linda were chasing us. My father, a man who prided himself on his dignity, was sprinting, his face purple with exertion. He caught up to us near the parking lot. He grabbed my shoulder, his grip bruising. "Get back inside!" he roared, spit flying. "You are humiliating this family." I stopped. I turned around. For 29 years, I had been afraid of this man. I had walked on eggshells. I had swallowed my pride. Not today. I placed both hands on his chest and shoved, hard. He stumbled backward, losing his footing on the loose gravel. He flailed, catching himself on the hood of a parked Lexus to stop from falling. He looked up at me, shocked. The ice in his eyes was gone. For the first time in my life, I didn't see a giant. I saw a sad, desperate old man losing control. "Don't ever touch me again," I said. My voice was dead calm. We turned and dove into the backseat of Mike's Honda. "Go!" Mike peeled out of the lot, tires screeching, leaving a cloud of gray dust that settled all over my father's expensive Italian suit. As we hit the highway, the adrenaline crashed. Sarah started sobbing, not from sadness, but from pure relief. I looked in the rearview mirror. The venue was shrinking. Mike shook his head, looking at me in the glass. "Dude, if any part of that was true, they are crazy as hell. You guys need to go no contact tonight." Back at the venue, the fallout was absolute. We learned later from a sympathetic cousin what happened after we left. The visual ruin of my parents was total. They had to stand in the center of that empty dance floor, surrounded by 200 confused guests and $20,000 worth of cold salmon, and explain why the groom and bride had fled the scene. The rumors spread faster than the champagne. They weren't the dignified victims. They were the crazy parents who kidnapped their son. They wanted a show, they got a circus, and they were the clowns. I watched the notifications roll in on my phone. Mom, 12 missed calls. Dad, 8 missed calls. Linda, 20 missed calls. Voicemails ranging from fake sobbing to screaming threats. I didn't listen to a single one. I deleted them all. 2 weeks later. Sunday morning. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet you only appreciate after a war. Sunlight streamed onto the kitchen table. No screaming, no guilt trips. Just the smell of coffee and the sound of birds on the balcony. Then, the mail arrived. It was a thick envelope, no return address. But I knew the handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an invoice. My father had itemized every single expense of the wedding we didn't want. Venue, $12,000. Catering, $8,000. Flowers, $5,000. DJ, $2,500. Total, due, $27,500. At the bottom, a note scrawled in Sharpie. Reimbursement for damages caused by your selfishness. Pay within 30 days or we go to court. Sarah looked at the paper. Her hands started to shake. Mark, we can't afford a lawyer. Well, what if they sue us? I looked at the invoice. A year ago, this would have broken me. I would have begged. I would have paid. Now, I felt nothing. Just a cold, detached indifference. They won't sue us, I said. I grabbed a pen. I didn't write a check. Instead, I pulled out a photocopy of our marriage license, dated 6 months ago from the county courthouse. On the back of the invoice, I wrote a letter. Short, sharp, deadly. To Mom, Dad, and Linda. Enclosed is the legal proof that we were already married. We did not sign a contract for your party. We did not authorize your expenses. We did not consent to being held against our will. If you contact us again, by phone, mail, or in person, we will not be filing a check. We will be filing a restraining order for harassment and unlawful imprisonment. We have witness testimony from the venue staff that you refuse to let us leave. Do not test us. Mark and Sarah. I sealed the envelope. I walked down to the mailbox and dropped it in the slot. The metal clang of the mailbox closing sounded like a gavel hitting a block. Case dismissed. We walked back upstairs, locked the door, and for the first time in my life, I didn't care what my family thought. They wanted a show. They wanted puppets. But in the end, they learned the hard way. Blood makes you related, but only respect makes you family. Wow. A $27,000 invoice for a party nobody wanted. That takes a special level of delusion. But I have to know, would you have paid a single dime of that bill just to keep the peace? Or would you have countersued for the emotional damage? Let me know in the comments below. Was Mark too harsh, or did his family get exactly what they deserved? And if you loved seeing Mark finally grow a shiny spine, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into Reddit's biggest dramas.